I don't want to ruin your morning, but today I'm going to challenge some assumptions, some things that we assume to be true, and that they feel fundamental, but aren't necessarily so. For example, and I hope this isn't as distressing for you as it was for me, Sherlock Holmes never said, "Elementary, my dear Watson." James Kirk, Captain Kirk from Star Trek, one of my childhood heroes, never said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And maybe more relevant to us in healthcare, Charles Darwin never said, "Survival of the fittest." What he did say was that those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Now let's just sit with that thought as I go through a few more minutes of this plenary today, and I'll come back to it at the end. Welcome to New Zealand, welcome to APAC, and welcome to Middle-earth. It's a beautiful place, and all seems well. My name, as you heard, is Jonathon Gray, and I'm the director of Ko Awatea. Based in Counties Manukau, funded and an integral part of Counties Manukau District Health Board in the heart of South Auckland. Ko Awatea is the name gifted to my organisation by the people of this land. It's a name we feel intensely proud of and means first light. That moment at the dawning of day when anything feels possible. Ko Awatea has an important role here at APAC. We're here to host you and to facilitate your conversations. I am so energized after that opening. It was amazing. There was Geraint and I beating a big piece of rubber over in the corner. It was fantastic. And I looked at you, a gathering of so many of the very best in the world, all joined up in a rhythm. It was absolutely wonderful. So on one hand, I'm energized, I'm confident, and I'm hopeful. But on the other hand, I'm aware of the huge challenges that we face together. There is much that is so strong and so good, but I am worried. Amidst all this glittering lights, there is a darkness, and some behaviors and some ways of working that seem to take us so far, but not far enough. Some behaviors that I'm starting to worry might even be dragging us backwards. And perhaps you share my unease, a sense that perhaps not all is as well as we would hope. A niggling worry that perhaps our wonderful individual efforts might not be enough. I think of it as a shadow, a darkness that's been building for years now, I think. A dragon that will overwhelm us and overwhelm our systems. The hope we share when we get together at things like APAC is amazing, but I'm worried it's not enough. I fear, looking back over my shoulder, that if we continue to do more of the same, we will not improve fast enough to win this war. We've come here today as individuals, as organizations, to learn from each other in the face of so many challenges. So I keep asking myself, why am I so worried? The worry I feel in the pit of my stomach isn't new. So I thought, let me tell you a story about when I first remember that feeling in my stomach. Let me take you back to when I was 12. Where were you when you were 12? Maybe like me, you're thinking of the 70s. Maybe for some of you, the 80s. Maybe for the lucky one or two of you, it was the 90s. But where were you? What were you doing? On the weekend, I was listening to this chap, David Bowie, on my radio. And I remember my mum closing the door and turning on the TV, and we were watching The Good Life. But now it's a Monday. I'm standing in a line of children at school. It wasn't a fun line to be in, and I stood in it every day. It was the lunch line. Well, in fact, that's not quite true. It was one of the lunch lines. At my school at lunchtime, there were two queues. One queue for children who paid, and another for children who got free school meals. How each class was divided was obvious to everyone, and miserably inescapable to those of us standing in the wrong line waiting for our lunch. My two friends and I stood in that free lunch line every single day and ate in a different place and at a different time. We may even have eaten different food for all I know. We were different. We knew it, and so did everyone else in my class. What I wanted to know then at the age of 12 was, why were there two lines? I knew then and I know now that it didn't have to be this way. We didn't need 2 lines. We needed only 1 line. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm intensely proud of my birth country and all it gave me. But in that dinner line, I started to feel feelings perhaps we've all felt. Feelings of being different, of being set apart, feelings of being lonely, horrid feelings for children. These feelings lingered on long after dinner had been served. I felt shame standing in that line. I felt unspoken judgments, and I desperately wanted to be in a school where there was only 1 line for dinner. I wanted it then, and you know what? I want it now. I'm not just talking about school dinners, of course. We have many different lines in life. We have lines in our organizations. Lines that separate and divide us. Patients in our health systems stand in different lines. Some can't even line up at all. In this beautiful country where I'm intensely proud to be, some of the most in need can't even join a line. They have unpaid bills with their GPs, so they aren't even allowed to get in a queue. There are lines that divide us in the world of improvement. We all need to access resources and support, but who do the have-nots turn to for that support? Where do you find help when you're dealing with a crisis? Do you have access to expensive consultants? Can you afford the latest and the best information? Or are you standing in another line, the one that doesn't have, doesn't get? Surely these divisions can't be healthy in our systems. I'm pretty sure that now isn't the time for us to be dividing up our talent, our knowledge, our resources, with different lines that act as divisions between us. Now surely is the time for us to be working together, having just 1 line in health and healthcare. One of the things that creates divisions between us is that feeling of competition. There are lots of reasons we feel competitive as human beings and as professionals, but by its very nature, competition inevitably creates winners and losers. Do we want any of our families to be amongst the losers? The challenge to our health system is growing, and I believe this divisive behavior, such as competition, makes it harder to respond. But I can hear people in the audience already. Jonathon, you're naive. Maybe I am. Maybe the system's doing just fine, thanks, Jonathon. Maybe I'm jumping at shadows. Perhaps it's not too bad. Think for a moment of some of the challenges you're facing at the moment in your own organization, in your own health system, but also step back a bit and think about what's happening in that bigger system we're all part of. Consider the scale of some of these issues, and I want to acknowledge my friends at Wish who alerted me to these at one of their recent conferences. There are 44 million people in the world with dementia. That's 10 times the population of New Zealand. There are 350 million people right now living with diabetes. That's the same as the population of the entire Eurozone. Despite the best efforts of our friends, such as those at USAID and World Vision and many more, this year, 300,000 women and children will die needlessly in childbirth. That's 34 an hour. That's 1 every 2 minutes. Consistently, the evidence is that harm occurs in 10% of our hospital admissions. That's tens of millions of cases of harm per year. And healthcare is inevitably taking away resources from other core services that impact on health. We know this: education, housing, justice. So will doing business as usual meet this extraordinary challenge? I don't think so. I don't think the healthcare system that's got us here is going to get us out. So yes, I'm worried, and perhaps you understand those fears. These challenges are real. Sometimes, to be honest, they overwhelm me. They overwhelm me as an individual, and I wonder how many of you sympathize with that. But the answer is we're not doing this as individuals. We can do this together. When I stop and reflect, I still feel intensely hopeful. The reason for that hope is you. Because you know what? When good people are challenged, we come up with some amazing solutions. Last year, we were sitting at APAC in Melbourne. We were on the edge of our seats listening to Dave Williams, the astronaut. He inspired us. Dave's spacewalk is a symbol of that momentous step that we must take. They said a man could never get to the moon and safely back again, but they did. And Dave and others on that space station have ventured out into space on walks again and again. But no astronaut, not even Dave Williams, achieved those momentous steps in space alone. And to take that first step, we aren't going to be working alone either. Together, we can take a step. We can venture out, journey to our goal, despite all those dangers and difficulties.
You'll have a tale or two to tell of your own when you come back.
Can you promise that I will come back?
No. And if you do, you will not be the same.
It's a dangerous business stepping out of our front door, and there's little time to pack, there's little time to plan, and there's little time to ponder on this particular journey. We need to get a move on. Just like Frodo in The Hobbit, our journey starts at our front door, and like Frodo, we will not be walking alone. Look around. We can find traveling companions all around you as committed as we are.
This is it. This is what? If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been. Come on, Sam. Remember what Bilbo used to say? It's a dangerous business,
Frodo, going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
"1,500 of us gathered here to take this journey together. The combined energy, expertise, and enthusiasm in this room is amazing. You've shown that again this morning. And to be honest, it's one of the key things that stands out to me every year when we run APAC. And I hope you'll agree, it's a secret sauce that we somehow bring together. Look at the posters, the presentations, the people that you've already chatted to, the connections you've already made. You will not be on your own. So now I want to take you on a very small adventure, all of your own, right here in this room. Now, you and I, we've all been to many conferences, and I've noticed that we often come into conferences and sit next to somebody we know. But the people in front and behind are often unknown territory. I'm going to invite you in a minute to reach out to a person either in front of you or behind you and introduce yourself. Then I'm going to ask you to share with each other one thing you are currently worrying about. What do you wake up worrying about? Not your teenage daughter, but what are you thinking about at work? You have 1 minute each, and I'm going to time you. So reach forward or backwards, share that one thing you're worrying about from work, and then 2 minutes time, a thunderclap will bring you back. Go. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the thunderclap. We thought it was too loud, but it obviously wasn't. Come on back. Thank you very much. Wow. The thunderclap wasn't loud enough to bring you back. And thank you. I hope you got something out of that sharing with a fellow APAC attendee. Perhaps that person next to you or one of their colleagues is working on something that is part of the issue that's keeping you awake at night. Now imagine, just imagine, walking away knowing that you had access to all the knowledge in this room and across the thousands and thousands of improvement colleagues that we have internationally. Imagine if you came to this conference on your own and you left this conference in a team of 100, 1,000, 10,000. I want to restate, the problems, big as they are not problems we face as individuals. They don't just belong to me or to you or to you. They belong to us all. They are our problems. And we can solve these problems not by battling forwards in isolation, but through collaboration and knowledge sharing. We can be part of a system that rejects "it's who you know." And we choose "we all know each other." A system that drops the limitations of "you get what you pay for," and works with new possibilities around "you get what you need when you need it." It is not all darkness. Imagine if this entire room could be available to you the next time you're tackling a wicked problem at work. We have great people, we have great minds, and through our connections in this wonderful improvement community, we are many, many thousands strong. In this room, we have patients and carers. We have friends and colleagues. We have the best clinicians and the best managers. We even have knights and nobles. We have partner organizations and health systems working on similar problems to our own, and we have representatives from many other sectors. Together, this room has already solved massive problems. We've tackled financial deficits while still improving quality of care. We've prevented harm to millions. We've made whole countries infection-free. We've solved admissions problems, bed blocking, waiting times, continuity of care, readmissions. We've reduced length of stay, improved recovery rates. We've integrated medical and social care. We've moved services into the community, learned how to share decisions with patients and families, and so much more. But it's a huge but. We've not managed to do it everywhere. And it's everywhere, every service, every system that this needs to happen. We can make that leap from these small jewels of amazing success to achieving this level of success, not just for my family, but for everyone's family. Not just a few in a special line, not just a few lucky enough to be in the right place, just one line, and everyone receives the great care that we want and know we can deliver. I want to share with you a story about another time when people and communities had to make a great leap. Another time of challenge, another age perhaps of darkness, and it's a story about clay soil. I can hear you asking, did he really start talking about clay soil? Well, forgive me, but clay soils are fascinating. They are, and I'm going to prove it, because clay soils are themselves incredibly poor. But if you go a little deeper under the clay, the soil tends to be immensely fertile. So in the early Middle Ages, Northern Europe was plagued by clay soils. Clay soils, as I've said, were poorly fertile and unproductive compared to soils elsewhere in the world. And historians believe that that single difference had a profound effect on the productivity of Northern Europe. Northern Europe was in the Dark Ages partly because of clay soils. That's what they look like. My garden. Historian Lynn White described how a heavy plough that could dig much deeper and turn over the clay to the fertile soil below hugely increased fertility and productivity of those fields. A technological advance. The heavy plough was a crucial first step. Now, other technological advances had to come along with it, of course. Animal breeding. You needed heavier horses and heavier oxen, stronger harnesses so these big horses and oxen could pull this big plough. Even so, all that technological advance alone was not enough. A knowledge advancement was also needed. Field rotation. Strange thing, but the idea of rotating usually between 3 fields so you maximized and actually increased the fertility of the soil year on year. Field rotation, a knowledge advancement. So was that it? The Dark Ages were solved because of technology and knowledge? No. The final and crucial part of this puzzle was that people and communities had to change. Farmers tended to live on a single field, and no one family usually owned the multiple oxen that you now need to pull this blooming heavy plough. So to manage the new plough and to allow the field rotation that we know is also advantageous, people had to let go of old groupings, old ways of working, and bring themselves into this new social structure. Amazingly enough, people shared fields. They shared oxen. People had to take a risk, collaborate, reshape, reform, and find new ways of working. Imagine sharing your fields, your oxen, your technology. What might that look like in your ward, your department, your system? Perhaps, heaven forbid, it might mean rotating your staff and ideas across a country, across a system, to increase its overall fertility. Now, I know some of the feelings that we all get. Some will say it's impossible to change at this scale, but I don't believe that our ancestors managed it. Some will say APAC is only a drop in the ocean of such a big problem. So how can we help? I don't believe that either when I look and see and meet the amazing people we have here today. Some will say, small countries like New Zealand, what can they do? I definitely don't believe that. Look at our friends in Singapore and Scotland and Wales, amazing people, small countries that make a difference. Some would say, Jonathon, all very well, but we're okay, thanks. Let's not worry about the rest of the country, the rest of the world. No, I definitely don't believe that. Look at the passion and commitment our friends, all of you, but our friends, particularly at World Vision, have managed to create in New Zealanders to help in other countries around the world. It is definitely, though, too hard to do on our own. Impossible, in fact, and that is part of the problem. These challenges, these dragons are too big to face alone. It sometimes feels like the easy thing to do is just to think about our own patch, our own organization. Even if it's the easy thing, though, it's the wrong thing to do for our populations. So, this example teaches us a couple of things, and I'm grateful to another friend, Muir Gray, for helping think through some of these ideas. This sort of change requires people, it requires knowledge, it requires the right technology, all combined to give us the speed we need. So let's get ready for this journey, one that needs to start here, today, right now, with 3 steps. Now, those first 2 of those steps involve giving. Now, that is blooming hard, sharing our knowledge with everyone in our community, linking as a broader community. And I really do acknowledge that the energy needed to give when we're all so tired and stretched is really hard. But I was thinking about it, and I think we maybe, but I owe it. Because as I look back at my journey and realize, probably like you, that all the big steps that I was lucky enough to make were holding the hand of a mentor, a friend, as they give to me. So I was thinking about some of the people I owe so much to, and I'd like to tell you about just a few of them. So let me take you to Scotland. It's winter. A mild winter. And I'm going to talk to you about roses. Stracathro Hospital, and I'm doing my surgical house jobs at the age of 23. I was fortunate enough to be looking after an amazing patient called Mr. Williams. Now, I was a young doctor. The case notes told me that Mr. Williams, he was 86, he had advanced prostate cancer, and he was dying. He talked to me every day as I catheterized him. He knew his prognosis was very poor, but he was desperate to share with me something he had learned. And he told me there is always a choice that we can make. There's always a choice we can make. There is always a choice we can make, which is optimism or pessimism, happy or sad. And he chose to live to see his roses bloom just one more time. Each day, in the midst of the disinfectant, the disease, the distress, he shared with me his joy of sitting amongst those beautiful roses. They were his reason for wanting to get home again, his choice of happiness, if only, as he knew, for a few short months. Just to see them in bloom one more time, Jonathon. Mr. Williams mentored me, showing me how we feel and act is a choice. So we'll move from Stracathro a little bit down the road, and we'll go to Dundee, Ninewells Hospital, Dundee, Scotland. And a close friend of mine was the first to chastise me about competition 30 years ago. We all worked really long hours, but he seemed to disappear into the walls of the hospital, hardly ever surfacing. He never made it home for the food that I cooked. We shared beers in our flat, but he rarely turned up for our drinks, and I didn't understand it. When I finally asked him what was going on, he told me he hated the speed, the competition. He was referring to our daily job as junior doctors to admit as many people in A&E ED as fast as we possibly could. I had managed 15 that day. I was really proud. He'd managed 7. In my mind, more was good. Or so I thought. He was talking to them. He was talking to people, building relationships. And at the time, I thought I was winning our daily battle. But he reminded me I was losing. And so were the patients I was looking after. Leyland mentored me, showing me we deal in people and families, not numbers. Just 2 examples, a patient and a friend who gave of themselves to me. I was trained to believe I had the answers. I was sure I could solve things on my own in just my small system. I forgot how to learn from outside my small world. That's why we bring amazing people together, like last night, like today and tomorrow, but also like our TEDx Manukau, where we learned from our local community in South Auckland. When I think back, the times I've really learned the most has been the times I've taken off my white coat, my stethoscope, and really listened and learned from people around me. And let's not just learn from individuals. Let's learn outside healthcare and from other big organizations. Perhaps catch the chief exec of World Vision. He's going to be here later today. Offer to buy him a drink. I did. I wanted to learn how his organization makes such a deep and lasting change in developing countries. Wonderful. But most of all, I wanted to know how they'd persuaded my 14-year-old daughter, Hannah, who I can't persuade to clean her bedroom, to undertake a 40-hour famine along with 120,000 other young New Zealanders last year. Incredible. I asked a young man, Guy Ryan, how do you capture the stories and inspiration from young people in our communities? They had the answers, but equally they had some more important, the right questions. There's a power to be unleashed, because quietly among us, there are groups of people that are working to improve the world. They are beacons of hope. They are small candles in the darkness, and they are allied to our cause. These people often step out of their line and join and fix another line. They don't step up onto pedestals. Instead, they choose to work with us at the front line. They've got their sleeves rolled up, and they're getting their hands dirty. They are part of our line, one line. A brief aside. Something I'm feeling really, really passionate about at the moment when I think of all of you, great people and your great achievements. I love poppies. I love what they represent. You are amazing people. And I'm sure that on occasion, you've been given the cold shoulder. You've been criticized. You've been marginalized for some successful work, innovation, or leadership. You know what it's like being a tall poppy. I believe we can and should learn from and celebrate tall poppies. I am frustrated by this disturbing pleasure people have attacking groups of individuals who achieve some success. I suspect it comes from some sort of insecurity. How much better would it be if we felt humble enough and secure enough to say, well done? How can I learn from you rather than immediately cutting you down? Let's move away from that tall poppy syndrome. Poppies are flowers that bloom in disturbed earth. That's why they grow on battlefields. In the midst of so much pain, so much suffering, they represent a small positive. In the mud and upheaval, the smallest seed can germinate, break loose, and flower. What a metaphor for our own battles and the potential new growth that may come from our struggle. Let's cherish our tall poppies and the learning they can give us. And as one small step together, let's all try and celebrate the next tall poppy we encounter. And there are lots here at APAC. Look after them. So, after people, I want to talk about knowledge for a moment. We have a system perfectly designed to get in the way of learning from each other. I believe we all have so much more to learn than to teach, and I believe we should deliberately set out to learn from each other. So why don't we? Last year, we were very fortunate to be hosting some of our wonderful Singaporean friends and colleagues at Coahuatea. Just before lunch, I presented on our 20,000 Days campaign. Now, we are very proud of this campaign, which successfully reduced the demand on our hospital and returned over 20,000 healthy days back to our community. Our visiting friends clapped politely, and on a high, I joined them for lunch. And as I stood, choosing a celebratory canapé, one of our visiting friends tapped me on the shoulder and congratulated me again. Then very politely, very humbly, he invited me to visit his system in Singapore, where just the year before his team had successfully saved 80,000 bed days. If I had had the foresight, the humility to find out what other people had done before, perhaps we would have quadrupled the savings for our community. To my shame, I didn't reach out and learn from others. I was completely locked inside my own silo, my own comfort zone. New leaders and old ones like me, we need to search out collaboration. We need to hunt down innovation. We need to find those good ideas in every quiet corner of every service. The alternative is we keep building our own private roads that don't join up and perhaps are bridges to nowhere. Still on that topic of knowledge, I want to explore with you how we use knowledge to predict the future. Looking back and learning from history is crucial, but that is not enough. And I want to explain that to you in the way that a new friend of mine, Mike Wagner, and I really want to pay my respect to the advisory board. I saw Mike talking about this, and I unashamedly have stolen it, so sorry, Mike, but I'm going to introduce you to a new friend of mine called Bobby McFerrin.
Talking about expectations. Watch.
Ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba.
Okay.
So thank you, Mike, and the advisory board, and thank you, Bobby McFerrin. I think that shows we're programmed to think in a linear fashion. We need to learn from the past and from our friends, but crucially, we need to add into that learning from a broad and wide community. Now that is more difficult when we're fragmented and siloed. The number of alternate views are decreased. We live in our own world, not exposed to others. The leaps forward come from creative interaction with a whole range of ideas, a wide range of people, a wide range of different people. I fear in healthcare that we're predominantly changing in a linear fashion. As a consequence, we build bigger hospitals. Whilst helpful, that's not going to be fast enough to keep up with the speed of our problems. Did you know that to continue healthcare in the way that we do, Devi Shetty, the cardiac surgeon in India, recently told us that India alone needs 500 new medical schools, 3 million more doctors, and 6 million nurses. We can't continue simply doing more of the same. Now let me take you back in history for an example of linear thinking. In 1930, French military strategists, looking back at World War I, ordered the building of something called the Maginot Line. Grand fortifications to stop another German invasion. The line was truly wonderful and strong. The fortifications were incredibly well designed and they were beautifully built. French generals were convinced the Maginot Line would keep France safe. But all that planning and hard work came to nothing in 1940. The Germans were newly mechanized. and they invaded France, sweeping around those expensive static defenses, the French generals simply didn't recognize how much the world had changed around them, and they didn't anticipate the speed and agility of the German advance. Their expensive defensive line, built for a war like World War I, was simply ineffective in the agile warfare of World War II. So my question is, where are we building our own Maginot Line? I wonder if hospitals are one example. The enemy, the challenge is changing, and we'll just drive around our hospitals. We need to improve faster than linear thinking will allow. Linear thinking is connected to disconnected people, ideas that are owned by just a few and hoarded, competition between silos, consultancies selling treasures to those who can pay. Linear thinking and all that causes it bring us to a war we are losing. We could continue our old ways of behaving, limiting the new ideas. We will, without wanting to, reinforce a two-tier system, a system with two lines. Let's not simply continue to build hospital wards that have hardly changed over the decades. In fact, let's not build the hospital for the future. Let's think differently about what care will require. Let's not line up and march into battle like we used to do, or we will be horsemen fighting tanks. Edwards Deming, perhaps the father of quality improvement, predicted that with competition comes opaque barriers between organizations that limit the ability to learn and share knowledge. Imagine, in the face of competition, insecurity, loneliness, the darkness, if we could call out, help each other, give knowledge away, expect no payment other than reciprocation. When I imagine what that could look like, I picture a hypothetical, mythical, non-existing executive team meeting on a day when some system-wide data comes out. Instead of looking at league tables desperately and that relief when we're not in the bottom few, I imagine that hypothetical executive team noticing another system has done really well. And the first impulse is to get a note off to them, congratulating them and asking, can we visit next week? Similarly, noticing another system are struggling with something we have improved. There is an immediate impulse to put a call into their chief exec, offer our lead clinicians to share what they've learned already. Wouldn't it be great if the next time we're tempted to behave one way, we might try and choose the other? Wouldn't it be great if the next time we come off favorably from a whole system perspective, we choose to reach out and offer that learning to others? We've talked about people, we've touched on knowledge, and now I want to just spend a little time on the right technology. And I want to go back even further. Let's go back 2,000 years. A vast empire, 3 continents. It lasted 1,100 years. It was a thriving civilization that produced technology, culture, and architecture that was unequaled for centuries. What can we learn from the Romans? They valued knowledge. They deliberately built their baths, their spas, and of course their fora on which this is modeled, deliberately created opportunities for discussion, debate, and exchange of ideas. But the Romans also give us a clue about the right technology to build on that people and knowledge and build some rapid change. The Romans had a technology to spread ideas rapidly. 50 miles per day is the estimate, and they built their empire accordingly. The technology for them was metalled roads, giving them speedy access to all parts of their empire. They advanced on metalled roads. The Romans were extraordinary. They invested in what was probably the first information superhighway. Technologically advanced, incredibly effective, this network of roads gave them agility and speed. They could exchange information, they could move resources, they could respond. Like the Romans, we need, in our community, to build a network so we can exchange information, knowledge, share resources, respond for each other quickly and efficiently. It would allow collaboration, teamwork, and cooperation. From being siloed to united, sharing, cross-pollinating. What is our metalled road? So I can hear you. Surely, Jonathon, we're doing better than 2,000 years ago with the Romans. Well, maybe, but I'm not sure. In places we do well, but at our worst we're fragmented and siloed, and that slows us down. Now technology provides us with many answers. In healthcare, we seem to tolerate systems that don't talk to each other. I once heard at a Wish conference Lord Darcy describe it as a city of Babel where people can't communicate with each other. Each building, each site is a silo. Each district health board can be sometimes a silo. So how do we cope? Sneakernet. In true workaround, we carry data by foot between devices. Sneakernet is a well-known phenomenon where the fastest rate of data transfer between locations is obtained by copying the data onto a disk drive that you put in the car and drive between locations. It doesn't have to be this way. This disconnect, this linear progression, isn't inevitable. Let's look outside healthcare for a minute. Communications technology. Believe it or not, as a 5-year-old, I remember being the slate monitor, cleaning our chalk and writing slates at school. As a 7-year-old, I remember filling up the inkwells at school so we could write with an old ink pen. When I was at university, computers arrived, I had an Amstrad. I remember the fax coming and almost going. I ditched my vinyl for cassettes. I then ditched those for CDs and spent hours and hours uploading them into iTunes. And then recently I felt really cool when I abandoned all of that for Spotify. And if you think that's fast, just look at the speed of social media. The pace is truly astonishing. What an amazing pace of speed in just one 51-year life to date. But currently our healthcare IT is fragmented and it's not that good superhighway we need. We need to learn from the rapid evolution of social media. In healthcare, I would argue we're slower because we're fragmented and siloed. So let's think about that a little bit more. Can I suggest some of the issues might be? The management systems we sometimes work in reward competition, encourage tribes, divide and rule. And my suggestion is that competition sometimes is toxic. It can sometimes crush innovation by fostering a fear of failure and building what Deming called those opaque walls. Consultancies strip us of opportunities to learn and grow local solutions. Incentives sometimes call to the wrong part of our staff. In the context of corrosive competition, desperate attempts to fix the system can be exhausting, demoralizing, and frankly, no fun at all. So I believe we must choose collaboration over competition. It can be no surprise that our systems are perfectly designed to ensure we face this tsunami of demand on our own, alone, in small groups, and we don't yet have a way to tackle this together. We are divided in separate lines, but it doesn't have to be this way.
It's smarter to travel in groups.
We are connected. We are together, and we do not need to face this alone. I've been really fortunate with my mentors. The geneticist Peter Harper in Cardiff taught me, talk and learn from everyone, Jonathon. Don Berwick inspired me, inspires us all, and teaches us to be brave in our vision for the future. Mansell Aylward inspired me and taught me that small nations can take on formidable challenges and win. Geraint, who you've heard from today, taught me that leaders are brave and leaders make room and make space for others to perform. These are all amazing people, and along with my colleagues and my family, they constantly show me that we can do more when we're connected. Now, APAC is about connection. It's about learning from each other, sharing new ideas freely and fast, communicating, asking for help, staying connected. Remember the conversation with the delegate in front or behind you. Maybe you shared the same worry. Or maybe they shared a worry of a colleague of yours back at home who you could now connect. How do we make it possible to connect like that 365 days of the year? So we've said, I think we need people. Let's get them out of different lines into one team. Knowledge, let's join up our global community, learn once and share. Technology, let's use the right technology to go from islands to connectivity. How will we bring this all together? So, what is perhaps part of the answer? Well, I think we need to build young leaders. I think we need to know what's being done. Identify who shares our worry and is also trying to solve it. Who are our potential collaborators? And even if we could do all of that, wouldn't it also be great if we could understand what's coming towards us? Now, sadly, right now, I've put a cross against each of those because it doesn't feel that easy. What if it could be different? What if we could build and support a whole system learning and improvement together now? Young leaders, we need to support them. And yesterday, I was privileged to be in a room when we launched with World Vision a test where we brought together some of those 120,000 young people to learn about improvement and community organizing, and we will offer learning and leadership to young leaders 12 years and old in New Zealand over the next few years. That was a test for us, and if you're interested in how we engage with our youngsters 12 and over to introduce them to this world, then join up with us in that piece of work. It was amazing and inspiring. How would we know what's being done? 25 years I've been doing this sort of work, and it is still a mystery to me what is going on in most places. Unless you travel constantly and build up huge networks that are probably only applicable to you as an individual, we do not know what is going on in most places. So how do we learn? Let's map it. And I want to show you something in a minute. How would you identify who shares your worry? Well, let's connect. And I want to show you something about how we might connect to find other people who could collaborate in answering your current worry. And then, on top of it all, if we could do all of that, how would we know what we're going to be facing next? So, how would we use insight and prediction to spot that next challenge as it approaches? So right now, the next video, we're going to launch something that we're tentatively calling the Quality Improvement Command Center. Grand name. See what you think. And we're going to try and address those three issues, those three elements. We're going to put into it, already have started, all of the knowledge from all the APACs. It will hold all the award winners. It will hold everything we know from ourselves and everyone who wants to join with us, and we will share it for everybody. And I'd like to show you a short video that tries to say where we are at the moment and invites you to join us on changing all of this with some new technology. Once is enough for now. So There's a start of an offering. We were inviting you to join with us. Fill it up. Let us map all of your work and make it a resource that's available to everybody. Let's join up in the communication method that allows you to shout out and ask for a question to be answered, or at least to find people who are also struggling with the same thing. And then join with us in the prediction, which is actually seeing there's a conversation over there that's coming towards us, so we're ready. So I talked about a young leaders program. We've started. Join with us on that program. I don't think we can start too young, and 12 seems a good place to test. Know what's been done. We've now got a product here that we can map. It's free. Come to us and join with us in Koa Watea. Let's map it all so that everybody has access to it. Identify who shares your worry. There's a methodology now for doing that. Not just 3 days here at APAC, but every day of the year. And then start understanding what's coming towards us so we're all ready together. So I invite you, come and help us test this. Come to the Koa Watea website and test this out. Let's create APAC 365 days of the year. We think this will help. We want you to be part of that experiment. Catch us over the next couple of days, and let's build together a learning and improvement system that we're all proud of and proud to be part of. So, I'm starting to draw to a close, and looking back, I can see I was influenced by being poor, but in a wonderfully supportive community. I planned my escape from the Teesside horizon of chemical plants and steelworks. The first of my mentors, my mum, said, "It doesn't have to be this way," and I believed her. Daring to be indignant over those 2 lines instilled in me the possibility that it didn't have to be that way. Now, we all need those mentors to guide us. Those stars that stand out in the darkness. They are often disconnected and lonely, but if we squint, we can make out the patterns, the networks. If you look up tonight, if the sky allows it, you'll see a network that looks a little bit like a dragon. The dragon, the darkness that challenges us. Just next to it, you'll make out a plough, a small hint as to how our ancestors overcame a previous dark age. If you look wider, you'll see some of the 88 constellations that are visible from Earth. Now, I've talked today about dragons that challenge us, about a plough that gives us hope. I've talked about inspirational astronauts, and we're here at a conference themed on the Big Bang. The answer to our problems was always in front of us. The millions of bright lights, stars, each of you an individual light, a star. And our challenge is how to join them up into one huge constellation. And I'd like to extend an invitation to you all. No matter what you do, I invite you to have the courage to learn together, not separately. Now, we may feel swept up and carried along by the changes that are happening around us, just like Frodo did when he stepped outside his front door. We may feel lost. We may feel there is little light in darkness. We may feel alone. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can hold a light for each other. And I'm going to trigger something now by saying, a lone instrument is a haunting and beautiful thing.
One voice can be heard.
Two voices are louder and stronger. Together we are stronger. Together we are unbeatable.